So you're looking to take someone on in your business, but do you want an employee or somebody who's self-employed? Which one is better? Hello, I'm Jenefer. I'm the founder of Silk Helix, and we help small businesses with their employment law and HR so that they can focus on growing their business. So which one do you really need? Is it an employee or is it somebody who's self-employed? Well, the short answer is it really is going to depend on your situation and what you're needing. So I'm going to explore in this video an employee, what that really means versus a self-employed person and what that really means so that you can decide which one is best for your business. So let's look at some definitions and what we really mean by an employee or somebody who's self-employed. An employee is somebody who is under an employment contract. They are selling you their service, their time effectively. You are providing them with work. There's a mutual obligation. So you provide them with work and they will do that work for you. A self-employed person, on the other hand, is not an employment relationship at all. And in fact, it's a business-to-business commercial arrangement. So you are buying a service. So not their service, but a service. So they are providing you with what you need. It might not be them directly. They will have the right to substitute because what you're buying is the product, the service, the thing, as opposed to that individual. So when we're talking self-employed, there's a whole range of terms that are used to define these people that vary from industry to industry, and none of them have any legal basis or definition. When we're talking self-employed, we're talking all of these people together. So that might be somebody who's a freelancer. It could be somebody who is self-employed as a sole trader. It could be somebody who's operating a limited company. It could be somebody who, say for example, is renting a chair. There's a whole range of terms. It doesn't matter what you call people. If they are not an employee, then they're going to come under this kind of category of it being a commercial arrangement and it being an arrangement for a service as opposed to their service. And then we do have a challenge of unclear boundaries because we also have this worker definition which falls a little bit between an employee and self-employed person in that a worker is paid through the PAYE system. It's a contract for their service, so we're buying them their time, but there's not necessarily the mutual obligation. So in a worker, we would generally find that it's going to be, let's say, a bank or a casual type system where I might ring them up and say, I've got a shift next week, can you do it? And they'll either say, yeah, I can, or no, I can't, and it doesn't matter. And this is where it can get a bit confusing, a bit muddy, because different pieces of legislation cover different things. So some will cover workers and employees, some just employees. Actually, increasingly, it's covering both worker and employee, and the gap between those two is narrowing. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to ignore that worker status and I'm just talking employee and self-employed. But just know that that's there and it's a little bit more complex. So let's look at employee versus self-employed as an example. So let's say we need a wall built. If we have an employee build that wall, then we take all the risk. We are paying them for their time. However long it takes them to build that wall, we've got to pay them for every hour they spend doing it. If something goes wrong partway through, then we would be paying to rectify that, whether that's in terms of the tools, resources that they're using, or their time to fix it. It would be our job to performance manage them. So if the wall's not being built quick enough, then we would use performance management techniques to try and get them to build the wall quicker. In a self-employed arrangement, we're just paying for the wall to be built. We just want the wall to be there. How it's done, who does it, roughly how long it takes, it's not our problem. Yes, we might set deadlines. Yes, we might say to a supplier, we want this done and we want it done by this time. We want it to look like this. We would have those sorts of things put in there. But how that's achieved will be down to the supplier. Who does the work will be down to the supplier. If halfway through building that wall it falls down and they've got to start again, that's their risk, their liability. And that's the difference between whether we're getting somebody who is self-employed or an employee. So if we carry on with that example, that can help us to try and decide which it is that we want. If we only want a wall built and there's nothing else after that, then self-employed is probably better. We want to pay somebody to build a wall. We want to get the wall built. If, however, we know that, well, there's this wall, but then actually next week there might be that wall needs doing, or actually halfway through that wall the priority might change and we might need to get them to dig a hole over there actually, then we start to say, well, actually an employee would be better, because then we're buying in somebody's service, we're buying in somebody who can do all of these things, and us as the employer can say, stop building that wall today and go and dig that hole over there. Or actually, I want you to build that wall in this particular way, using these particular tools. So you've got a lot more control over what you're doing. If, for example, you're customer facing, then employees can be really useful over self-employed people because of that control. So let's look at, say, the salon industry, where we're talking rent-a-chair. Very, very common in the salon industry. When you're renting a chair, you're running a model which is that you've got a number of different businesses running out of a building, and each customer has a relationship with the individual business person renting the chair that they are the customer to. If you are running a salon and everybody is your employee, you have control over what they're doing, how they're doing it. So a customer isn't the customer of an individual, but is the customer of the business as a whole. This means that you can offer the customer to have a different person doing their treatments. It means that you can define how the treatments are being done. It means that you can define the customer experience. You can really define how people do things, the tools that they use. Let's say as part of your brand, you want everybody having a particular brand of hairdryer on their station. You can do that. Whereas if somebody's self-employed, you can't, because they're providing that. They are simply providing the service. So I appreciate that I've used some really basic examples there. And there's going to be a lot more to it in terms of the decision making that you're making. But hopefully that's given you a starting point to think about, what is it that you really need? What is it that you're really trying to buy? Because ultimately that is what we're doing when we're bringing in somebody, whether they're an employee or whether it's self-employed, we're buying something. We're either buying somebody's time, their service to us and to the business, or we're buying the service that they provide. And that's the big thing that we really want to look at, is what is it that we're trying to buy, so that we can make that decision as to whether an employee or a self-employed person is better. There are also tax implications, so it's worth speaking to an accountant to understand tax implications of the two. And therefore there's reasons why an individual might decide that they would prefer to be either an employee or self-employed. The thing to bear in mind is that it doesn't just come down to deciding what you're going to name them. This isn't about, well, if we write a piece of paper that says that they're self-employed, then they're self-employed. It's not as simple as that. The definition as to whether somebody is an employee and therefore should be paying the tax of an employee, should be entitled to employment rights, should be paid minimum wage, all of these things are legal definitions. And they're legal definitions based not only on what you decide, but also the reality of the situation. So HMRC or an employment tribunal both would have an interest in making sure that somebody is defined in the right way. HMRC from the point of view of ensuring they're collecting the right tax and minimum wage. And if the individual was to take an employment tribunal, then an employment tribunal would take a view on it as well. And they would look at, yes, the intentions of the parties, the paperwork, what's written down, but they would also look at what's happening in reality. So you might write into an agreement that somebody can substitute their labour, but actually in reality you don't allow them to, or it's so restrictive as to what you will allow that that clause is considered a farce. And therefore a tribunal would look at what is going on in reality. And what we find is that certainly in the employment tribunals, where it becomes a problem is when the individual is no longer happy with the arrangement. Often it will be because the arrangement means that they have become very unwell, long-term sick, and they're now not getting any sick pay that they would do if they were an employee, or perhaps they've been dismissed and actually want to say that this is now an unfair dismissal. Then they might add on things like claiming holiday pay and that they should have been entitled to. And this is why getting it right is really important, because it isn't just a case of saying, yeah, I want a self-employed person. I don't want to have to pay the tax. They don't want to pay the tax. Let's just have a self-employed person, because ultimately that might be fine while people are happy with it. But if HMRC get involved or the individual is no longer happy and decides to go to an employment tribunal, that's where your risk becomes, and that's where your issue becomes. So really what you want to be doing is making sure you get this right from the start. Don't just decide for one reason why you want one or the other. Look at it from the whole round. Look at it from the employment point of view and the tax point of view. So you may want to take advice from an accountant as well as an employment law specialist. Make sure that you've got the right decision for your business and that you're then able to manage that person or manage that contract in the way that you need to get what you need out of it. So I hope you found that useful in trying to decide whether you want somebody who is an employee or self-employed and what's right for your business. If you've got any questions, pop them in the comments below and I will do my best to answer every single one. And if you found this video useful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss a single one.